Alright, the video you're about to watch is a video that I previously regarded as lost media on my channel. The Hawk Hogan Show is a discontinued series. Basically, I was given a topic to talk about, and then I had to talk about the wrestlers involved without taking a single bit of thought about what I said. Which kind of left me sometimes worrying that I was going a bit too far. Some of the guys I spoke about in this series I just destroyed for no reason, and I'm sorry to those guys. The audio quality sucks, the video quality sucks, but it's kind of funny watching back my old shtick from 3 years ago. So, without further ado.
The Hawk Hogan Show is not intended to be taken seriously. I do not expect responsibility for your anger. By taking this seriously, you will look like a complete fool. No offense.
Kevin Bishop and Wes Briscoe. Hawk Hogan, you didn't answer my phone calls for 2 years. Did you forget something, Hogan? Hawk Hogan.
Alright, Hawk Hogan Show, episode 4. Every wrestler who signed a TNA contract in the year 2011. Shout out to the big man Caleb Robinson who's been supporting me over on Patreon throughout this. Alright, let's get into this. Hawk Hogan Show, episode 4, aka The Shove It Show. Anarchia. F. I genuinely hated everything about Anarchia's run in TNA. He was absolutely shocking. He was just a cheesy version of Chavo Guerrero but with less charisma. I genuinely don't know what any of his finishes were. The guy could barely move or talk or do anything. I just wish he'd get off my screen. It was more irritating because he was keeping Bad Influence from being the tag champions whilst he was with Hernandez. Never mind, because it wasn't long before he was back on the indie scene, having to sell his kidneys on the black market for rent. Tracy Brooks, D. Some of the older TNA fans were probably quite happy when she returned to TNA in 2011. Problem is she was treated as a complete joke. A year or two earlier she posed for Playboy and TNA were dead happy with this. Problem was, they never made the final cut of the magazine and it was released on the internet instead. I guess Tracy didn't blow their minds. Back in TNA land, Tracy Brooks tried to become TNA Lockout Law, which was basically a pointless title which was given to the leader of the Knockouts, but instead this was given to Karen Jarrett, and Tracy was relegated to being her stooge. Literally nothing happened, she was run down on TV and released pretty soon after. Kid Cash, D. Kid Cash looked like one of those packets of Walker's Crisps that you find in the back of your cupboard after 4 years. Gone off stale and nobody wants it. He worked with the X Division nerds for a while, trying to help get them over. Sadly, he failed. He accomplished nothing himself in TNA. Nowadays, he can be found at the back of your mum's cupboard. Alex Silver. F. Some might think I'm being a bit harsh on Alex Silver. Well, I tell those people no offence, but it's harsh that you're still alive. Alex Silver was that kid who got hired on the first ever gut check when Ric Flair famously went against the script and decided to give Alex Silver a contract. He only made 2 appearances in TNA. He was like 19 at the time. He was definitely not ready for the spotlight. He got a really big ego from being hired from TNA at this age. Mostly he was just relegated to the developmental territory. Nowadays he's in jail. No, I'm not even kidding. Still, I'd rather be in jail than be a burnt packet of crisps in the back of your mum's cupboard. Jesse Goddard's Mr. Pectacular. I don't know, C. I don't really know what to say about him. When he first came into TNA he was really green. He obviously had a good look though. He was a reality TV star. When I say star, he was like a F-list celebrity. He came in as Tara's boyfriend and would just press her above his head, because he didn't have any wrestling skills to do anything else at the time. He then formed a tag team that went on forever with Robbie E. called the Bromance. It was terrible. They won lots of tag belts but never had any good matches. Because they were happy to work for such little money, TNA chose to push them over Bad Influence, as Bad Influence cost a lot more money. He liked to wear his sunglasses back to front like a complete douchebag. They were soon joined by Zema Ion, more on him later. Jesse did get better in the ring over time. He still sucked though. Matt Hardy, D. He came into TNA in 2011 and joined the Immortal faction. This was during his cold-blooded Matt Hardy phase. He had dreadlocks. It was weird. He didn't really do much but throw tantrums in the middle of the ring and look like he was taking a dump constantly in his pants. The most memorable thing about this run in 2011 was when he challenged James Storm and Bobby Roode to a match, and his mystery partner was Chris Harris, James Storm's former AMW partner. Apart from Chris Harris was now fatter than Matt Hardy and made him look like a chiseled bodybuilder. Yep, this was quite a long way away from the Matt Hardy of the broken universe. Few more years to go yet, Matthew. Hang in there. I have to also say on behalf of Hawk Hogan that this was during Matt Hardy's biggest drug days, so I guess I can't hate on him too much. Mark Haskins, F. When I was doing the research for this video, I kept mixing Mark Haskins up with Mandrews. I don't know why. I guess they're both blonde and small, but Mandrews was a lot more awesome. Mark Haskins achieved virtually nothing in TNA, apart from one of the most memorable botches I've ever seen. He was fighting a match against Austin Aries at Wembley. I was here for this. It was amazing. He tried the shooting star press but missed and landed on his head. It was just like when Lesnar did it against Kurt Angle at WrestleMania. And from there, Mark Haskins' TNA career was over. He never appeared again. They thought he was a complete joke after this botch and he couldn't be trusted. I tend to agree with them. Nowadays, Mark Haskins lives on Universal credit. To all you Americans out there, that's the same thing as having food stamps. Chyna. D. Look, I wouldn't normally include someone who didn't actually sign a TNA contract, but I think she's very notable in 2011, so I had to include her in this list. She came in to join Kurt Angle as his mistress, as he was feuding with Jeff Jarrett and the former Karen Angle. They competed in a mixed tag match at the pay-per-view, and this was Chyna's last ever wrestling match before her sad passing. Chyna didn't really look too well here. She had pulled off some scoop slams and some presses, whilst everyone in the audience sat terrified, thinking she was going to drop somebody on their head. Thankfully she didn't. Rest in peace, Chyna. Jackie Moore. F. Jackie Moore, who was obviously quite famous for being one of the pioneers of the TNA Knockout division, returned in 2011, but it wasn't quite the same thing. She teamed up with ODB and they did a storyline that neither of them had contracts and they were desperately trying to get some new ones. They absolutely hated Velvet Sky. The storyline goes that they were pushed out of TNA by the hotter Velvet Sky. Eventually, Jackie was given a TNA contract, but then she never appeared again. What was the point? Anthony Nese. C. Look, obviously Anthony Nese as a wrestler would deserve a bit higher than a C, but I'm grading him based on his time in TNA. I didn't even realise he had a TNA contract. I thought he was just making some pay-per-appearance deals. He was signed for a year. They did absolutely nothing with him. A complete waste of time. He had about 6 matches, 3 of them against Zema Ion in a best-of-3 series. They were decent. Another wrestler that TNA wasted. Well done. DJZ. B. I was close to giving DJZ an A, but I didn't, and I'll come on to why not in a minute. He came into TNA with a can of hairspray and a massive hairdo, just like me in the morning when I'm getting ready for work. He wrestled primarily as an X Division wrestler, and he was pretty damn decent. I always felt like they could have done a tiny bit more than him, but he had some bad injuries during his time in TNA. He also badly injured Jesse Sorensen. We'll come on to him in a minute. Captured the X Division title 2 times. So he obviously did pretty decent. But then comes the low part in his career. He became like a third man in the Bromance tag team, and he would just have a little DJ booth at the side of the ring, and he'd constantly shout out annoying sounds and ruin matches. I don't know quite what TNA were thinking by having him do this. Maybe he was injured at the time and they just wanted to keep him on TV. It was terrible. Later on after this, he won the tag team title with Mandrews, and nowadays he's in WWE. Quite liked him, to be fair. Austin Aries, A. Wow, here's a first on the Hawk Hogan Show. 2 wrestlers that I've rated well in a row. Austin Aries was a 6-time X Division champion. Wow. He also invented option C, where the TNA wrestler who was holding the X Division title could trade it in for a world title shot at Destination X. This was a cool little gimmick and everyone liked it. He was also a 3-time world champion. He was one of the first TNA wrestlers who was a bit smaller to break the mold after AJ Styles by competing in the main event scene. I think they tried to hold him down a bit originally, but he was just so amazing in the X Division that they just couldn't keep him down. He also had a very memorable tag team with Bobby Roode known as the Dirty Hills. They won the tag belts a fair few times. If I listed all of Austin Aries' accomplishments in TNA, it would get its own video, so I have to give the man an A, even if he is a controversial character. Jesse Sorensen. I don't know, A+ for effort. Jesse Sorensen was another one of the ones who came in through gut check, and he was very promising at first. Problem was he just looked like a cheap Randy Orton knockoff. He would also come out with a football. That was his gimmick, because he was an ex-football player. Way to go being imaginative, TNA. He was quite liked by the crowd, to be fair, but soon Zema Ion would break his neck in an X Division match, and this would effectively be the end of Jesse Sorensen's career. Whilst he was laid off with the broken neck, TNA released him, and this caused a lot of backlash against TNA. The internet was up in arms, and all the little fat boys eating their Doritos in their room were spitting them and frothing at the mouths. The fact is, TNA might have handled it a bit badly at first, but they did end up giving him a backstage role. But his attitude was so bad that he couldn't stick around for long. He did wrestle a couple of matches in NXT, but he doesn't seem to be wrestling anymore. Shame, WWE could have used him, as Randy Orton's getting a bit older nowadays. And finally, Rosita. C. Rosita was one of my favourite parts of the Mexican America faction. That's not saying much, they were shocking. But at least she had a cool entrance and she was quite likeable. She was just so small though, it was hard to believe she could beat anyone up. She would win the TNA Knockout Tag Team titles with Sarita, and then they would eventually lose them to Eric Young and ODB, who were the final ever champions. Rosita and Sarita would try and seduce Eric Young by stripping for him, but he would decide to go with ODB instead. Eric Young is literally insane. Nowadays she wrestles in WWE as Zelina Vega. She's doing a lot better for herself than I thought she could ever manage, so fair play to her.